Hello again. So I decided it would be worth doing a follow-up on the last couple of videos that were put out there discussing the general hypocrisy and incompetence of Del and Gav, and in particular Gav, aka Vortex Puppy, or as I personally prefer to refer to him, Vacuous Muppet. So first I need to thank a couple of people who left comments on my videos to point me in the direction and a bit of information related to what we were looking at in terms of Gav's document and Dell's experiment. So first, thanks to Carioca for pointing out that the idea for the rig that Dell used in his observation of the horizon was actually an idea lifted from Zetetic Astronomy by Samuel Rowbotham, and also for coining the phrase Delodolite to describe it, which I think I'll refer to it as, in future. So anyway, Carioca pointed this out and linked me to the appropriate part of Zetetic Astronomy so that I could have a look. So I thought I'd just quickly highlight this for everybody. So in this section of Zetetic Astronomy, it's actually the section dealing with the collimation of instruments and lenses, which is the same section which Anthony Liley used to try and worm his way out of agreeing with Miles Davis' observation, which ultimately, it's the same source of upset that's brought this together, so it's a nice little tidy circle, Starts off with an observation, making them all go a bit crazy, and then they go running to the same source for excuses and ways to try and find their way out of it. So after discussing this issue with collimation, making a very slight shift in the image in instruments of the time, he then goes on to describe creating his own viewing instrument, which is effectively a length of tube, much as the idea of what was used in Dell's video. So I've highlighted the passage here. I'll just read it out, but I'll link this in the description. So it says, in every instance when the experiment was tried, this appearance was found to exist, but it was noticed that different instruments gave different degrees of horizontal depression below the crosshair. The author saw at once that this peculiarity depended upon the construction of the instruments. He ascertained that in those of the very best construction and of the most perfect adjustment there existed a certain degree of refraction, or, as it is called technically, collimation, or a slight divergence of the rays of light from the axis of the eye on passing through the several glasses of the theodolite. He therefore obtained an iron tube about 18 inches in length. One end was closed except a very small aperture in the centre, and at the other end crosshairs were fixed. A spirit level was then attached, and the whole carefully adjusted. On directing it from a considerable elevation towards the sea and looking through the small aperture at one end, the crosshair at the opposite end was seen to cut or fall close to the horizon, as shown at figure 31. Now we can see here that this is, from the sounds of it, the kind of inspiration for what Dell tried with his friend, who has also escaped mention so far, crazy Polish flat earther, otherwise known as Dan. So they haven't gone to the trouble of constructing it as described here, but it seems highly unlikely that people who are obsessed with this nonsense about perspective and who do refer to Rowbotham, who all get their stupid ideas originally from the conman Dubé, who was the person who originally reinvented all this Rowbotham stuff. Really, it's too much to believe that this isn't the source of the idea in the first place, especially when you're dealing with people who don't seem to have a single piece of original thought going on in their head. Anyway, I'll leave the link in the description. I just thought that was something worth pointing out, and thanks to Carioca for making me aware of that. So then the next person I want to thank is Grahvis for pointing out that Gav's document is really just a reimagining of another section from Zetetic Astronomy. Now the thing is, we've already identified that the work by Gav is really a flawed piece of text, and in terms of what the philosophy is that the idiot pushes every week is just hypocrisy from start to end anyway. It is a text document talking about ideas supposedly supported by computer generated images, and those images deal with trying to explain visual phenomenon, i.e. optical phenomenon, the geometry of vision, from an orthographic or side view representation, which he himself says is something that is an attempt to deceive and can't be done. So I'll show that bit of video just to back that up. But the point is that we know Gav is full of shit, we know his document is inherently flawed, and we know that it's not exactly the most original work. As I pointed out, I was under the impression that he might at least have went and looked at other information on optics from other sources before compiling together his garbage. But if you take a look through this section of Zetetic Astronomy, you will see the inspiration and source behind that document. Now, the wording isn't exactly the same, but if you're reading it carefully, you'll see the overall premise comes from here. Some of the arguments come from here. Certain parts of it are very clearly lifted and reworded. You can see that right off the bat. And even the labelling format of the diagrams seems to match in some cases, and so on and so on. So we can now add plagiarism to the list of Gav's academic attributes. Alright, so as I was saying a minute ago, there's a little clip I wanted to share with Gav giving some, idiotic opinion on something. And it's just another example of his hypocrisy as it relates to his document.
That's not how we observe the world. No optical device observes from a side view.
Yep. The geometry of visible space and the geometry of physical space are two different things. Yep. Right? And you cannot confound or confute the two when you're trying to argue, and anybody doing it deliberately is a wank, and anybody doing it unintentionally or innocently at the moment needs to better discern the difference between the two and correct his argumentation.
Yeah.
So there we go. In his own words, Gav is a wank, because he's chosen to represent the geometry of vision using side views, orthographic views, whatever terminology you want to use here. The other thing is that if we assume that he's doing it unintentionally, as per the final part of his statement, he needs to better his argument. So another thing that I wanted to share with you lovely people is a fantastic example of the pure genius that comes from Shed Rage High. Now, this starts off with a comment from Del and demonstrates Del's intellect and comprehension of physics superbly. But as we're actually concentrating on Gav, I just want to show this as well to back up the point that was being made that Gav is somebody who enables complete and utter horse shit in other flat earthers, particularly Del. And again, if he understands it, if he supposedly has a degree in physics and so on, then what you're witnessing here is somebody who is allowing false information to pass, which means he's doing it for his own agenda. It's got nothing to do with truth. Or, again, the only other option is he too is a fuckwit. So let's have a look.
Another interesting wee point. Gravity is the attractive pull between two objects that have mass. The strength of gravity is directly proportional to the amount of mass of each object. In other words, the larger the objects, the greater the gravitational attraction between them. Right? So, here's the thing. Why the fuck does water run down a mountain into a valley? Because surely it doesn't take a genius to work out that there's less fucking mass in the bastard valley than there is on the mountain.
Yep. Well, I want.
Right, so, in his own words, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that there's less mass in the valley below a mountain. The valley, of course, being a part of the Earth. And the Earth, of course, has, you know, a hell of a lot more mass than one tiny little mountain sitting on its surface. So he's right, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. It would take more of a fuckwit to figure that one out, because it's obviously completely retarded. But notice that if we skip it back...
Does water run down a mountain into a valley?
Look at Gav.
Because surely it doesn't take a genius to work out that there's less fucking mass in the bastard valley than there is on the mountain.
Yep.
See, I mean, it's not. Nope. Right. Now, obviously, anybody with a half-decent working brain would realise the flaw in what's just been said straight away, that the Earth itself is obviously far, far more massive than some small piece of rock which is sticking up above its surface. And Gav just goes right along with it. So again, we're seeing how it is that Gav handles this situation. Every time Del says something really fucking stupid, Gav agrees with it. He never disagrees with Del. But you know, every time Del says something completely wrong, backwards and retarded when it comes to the real world, the natural world, to physics, that, you know, something that is just so blatantly wrong and ignorant, you've got somebody sitting there who pretends to be educated in physics agreeing with him. So Gav is enabling Del's ignorance. He's encouraging it. He's allowing it to happen. Again, the only other option is that he himself is just as fucking stupid. So, you know, I don't really care which way it goes in a sense. I think that the first option is far more insidious, disgusting, despicable, and worthy of other people's attentions, and he should be looked at and dealt with for being that kind of person. Scum of the earth, as far as I'm concerned, if that's your game. But, you know, there's no positive outcome for Gav here. He's either a lying little dipshit who's just encouraging all this ignorant cult behaviour, or he himself is just an absolute fuckwit. I mean, I think when you see a lot of the things he says, even when he thinks that he is trying to be smart, it's not very intelligent in the first place. So personally, I think it's a kind of balance of the both. In certain circumstances like this one, I'm pretty sure that even this fucking idiot does know that Del was completely wrong to say that, but he's never going to question Del because that wouldn't fit with the agenda for the channel and for the cult. However, when it comes to him producing his own work, as we've pointed out, he doesn't really produce any work, and the only information he's put out there comes in the form of text documents and regurgitating other people's information. Now, we're going to take a look at that in a minute as well. We're going to take a wee look at Gav's channel to see, you know, what has he actually done in the couple of years he's been doing this. And we'll see that, you know, on the whole, the guy's just not that smart. He's got a big ego and he likes to tell everybody how smart he thinks he is. And he likes to make these big statements as if he's fighting against all these other people, you know, challenging people, and as if he's some great intellect that can see through everybody else's deception and all this fucking shite. I'll actually show you a specific example of that in a minute. But at the end of the day, he produces no valuable work of his own, and the things that he does say, you can easily take one look at it and see how flawed and wrong it is. So really, I said to him a long time ago, he's just a fucking armchair philosopher, a guy who's read a bunch of books and thinks that by quoting certain other people's work, it makes him intelligent. And it just doesn't. He's a fucking idiot. Well, another fantastic example of failed logic that I want to share. While watching this bit, it was immediately followed by a nice little piece that I had to answer. So I'll just let you hear what they have to say first.
Well, one simple point I wanted to make. Sorry, I'm going to go backwards. Is the watermarks that water leaves on stones, on piers, on harbours, on anywhere. I've yet to see any observations or footage that maybe covers that. But the very fact that that is also an absolutely level line, right? But the watermarks that are left at any state of the tide, right? You'll always get these watermarks as another way of showing that the world is indeed level.
There's a curved watermark.
Where's the curved watermark? It's missing, isn't it?
Is it now? Well, boys, let me introduce you to the work of my good friend Soundly. You may have heard of him, and his various observations of the Little Tensas Bayou. I'm just going to show a quick selection here, but the videos will be linked in the description, and anybody who wants to see a curved watermark is welcome to go and watch Soundly's videos taken at this location. Now, in one of his earlier videos in the area, this was the point that Soundly himself picked up on, and this is over a year ago.
This is one of my favorite shots. You can clearly see the high water mark curving.
These are videos, but I've just paused them to show the same place being photographed under a couple of different conditions from Soundly. And this is a more recent example given with an infrared conversion, which is the current flat earther trick, which they feel has some kind of magic capability to reveal the flatness. Soundly has obviously been disproving that by returning to the same locations, showing the same curvature in infrared, and we can see the watermark running along on this side of the basin. So sorry boys, this is another example where a couple of arseholes sitting in sheds or basements or whatever, flapping their gums like a pair of gas bags, fail when it comes to a comparison made to the real world. So if we move on to the kind of final piece of this hangout that I wanted to highlight, what we're going to be looking at here is a couple of things that Gav says and how they stack up against what he does himself in terms of producing work, and also showing again that he either misunderstands or helps to encourage the ignorant conception of the real world that Del and the cult have. So in a minute, Gav is about to try and share with the audience this belief he has that he's managed to debunk Wolfie, and that he's some kind of super genius that can debunk every globe earth argument out there. But as the conversation starts, there's a little bit of discussion about something, and this is going to tie into another point I want to make about Gav.
We've got people telling me that the horizon does drop now, although I've just showed that it doesn't.
That's what they say in Wikipedia as well, that the geometric horizon and the true...
Right, we don't need to hear the full thing with this. I just wanted to take a note of the fact that the first thing that Gav refers to when Del makes his false statement there is Wikipedia. Okay, because this is a little theme with him, and I'm going to point that out.
Well, I've seen some of them showing apparent curvature at a short distance, and there's like 50 feet, 50 to 100 feet.
Right, these wee tiny balls, these wee pictures we see, that we're living on a billiard ball, on a basketball.
Exactly.
They can't seem to make their mind up,
I know.
So this is just a quick one I wanted to share, because it's one that we're all familiar with, and we can see again that this fucking idiot is again helping to encourage these ignorant ideas, the whole living on a basketball thing, which stems from seeing observations where we can see the effects of curvature, usually through images that are quite compressed as well because zoom's been employed. Looking at, for example, boats over the horizon, and of course the one that they all hate, images by Soundly over at Lake Pontchartrain. This is the same argument we always get, and it's their misconception of the geometry. So again, this plays back onto the point that if this guy had a clue about geometry, if he really understood the maths behind it and so on, he wouldn't be making these ignorant statements. He would understand that there wasn't any contradiction. So to keep pushing it, excuse me, so to keep pushing it, again ties in with the idea that, and when it comes down to it, he's thick as fuck, just like every other flat earther who thinks these things. Or, as I say, you have to allow for the possibility that he isn't stupid, he does understand it, but he just keeps that narrative flowing because he wants that cult to grow, because he wants the attention from all the little sycophants in the chat, because when it boils down to it, he's a self-appointed genius, and people like that want other people to tell them that they're geniuses.